Jordan Brompton.
Hey,
I'm so excited that you've come to join me here. Thank you so much for doing that. And listen, let's get straight into it because I've been watching your career, I suppose, and Great British Entrepreneur of the Year, the list of awards. I even had to write some down here. Northern Business Champion of the Year, top woman in EV across the country. I mean, it's some lineup when you look at all the awards that you've been. Now, I know there's a story behind that somewhere along the line because Grimsby Girl done not just good, but great.
Thank you.
Give us give you an idea. How did you get to where you are now?
Well, first, thanks for having me. I know I've been trying to get this set up for a while, so it's nice to be here. And thanks for mentioning the awards. It always makes me feel a bit awkward. But I used to be based on this site where we are right now. Yeah. Like I've been doing a little bit of all sorts all my life, business-wise. But just to take it a bit further back from that, like I was never very academic at school. I was told by all my teachers that I could only be in travel and tourism, health and social care, or be a hairdresser. And not that there's anything wrong with those professions. I always say that, but it just didn't like scratch that itch that I had. I always looked up to people like business owners or people that had money. I'm not ashamed to say that, and think, how do they get there coming from a very like working class council estate like Grimsby? I used to look at people and think, how do they get that and what have I got to do? So from like a young age, and I mean young, like 12, I just wanted to work. So even I'd be at school, I'd just get by. It was very social. And I tried to learn on subjects that I was interested in, but if I wasn't interested, it lost my, attention. I couldn't hold my attention span very long. And because I didn't want to be like a rocket scientist or a surgeon or something like that, I always knew that education just wasn't necessarily the thing for me. I needed to get into work.
That's a big thing, isn't it? Trying to tap into the potential like that you had at 12 and 13 years old.
Yeah.
When you're not following the traditional route, you've got other plans in your mind already.
Yeah.
Schools need to cater for that kind of entrepreneurial behavior.
I wish they did, because I didn't even have anyone, that like life coaches that came in or people that gave you another option as a career didn't know what an engineer was. Because I'm quite creative and like quite critical thinking, and I think I would have been good at something like that had I got into it early enough. But my vision of as an engineer was like literally mud on your face under a car, fixing cars. I didn't like a mechanical engineer. I didn't think that you could be like an electronics engineer that engineered things like this or products that we hold every day. I just didn't know that was a thing. So I just like threw myself into whatever sparked my interest and whatever was going to earn me money so that I could take pressure off my mum and dad because they were super hardworking. They didn't love the careers or jobs that they're in. They had me really young. So I felt that pressure from a young age, not from them, but just to not add any more stress to like their life. So 12 years old, I got a job on the Sunday market. You'll know it well.
Oh, okay.
So I was like working on the Sunday market, selling scooters, like making a quid for every scooter that I sold or something like that. Nice. Then I got a paper round as soon as I was allowed. Then I started glass collecting as soon as I was 16, so I could be out, but not, drinking. Not out, but like soaking in the environment. Then I went into bar work. Then I worked in education for a bit. I worked at the Grimsby Institute. I did caring for a little while. I tried to go into higher education to do hairdressing because I listened to what my seniors told me and I thought, well, maybe I could be like a killer hairdresser. So everything I do, I always want to do it the biggest and best that I can do. So if I'm going to be a hairdresser, I'm going to have my own brand, I'm going to have my own salons. Yeah. But I was allergic to all the products. So I'm like ginger and I'm got weak skin. So like I used to wash people's hair and just rashes would come up my arm. I was like, well, that's that career over with.
All right, at least I found one weakness that you've got. Weak skin, okay. We'll go
and thank God, because I quite enjoyed that, and I might have just like not have tapped my full potential if I'd have stayed in that business. Who knows? And then I set up my own business, which was based here with your support, with a French friend, selling cycling products, distribution products for a little while. But my passion really sparked for the renewable industry when I met Lee Sutton, my business partner for My Energy. Yeah. And I guess I've just jumped from thing to thing. I'd work my way up. If it went as far as it could take me, I'd move on. But when I met Lee, he was the first time I'd A, met an engineer and B, met some like people manufacturing. And at school, I always quite liked soldering, like in the science class or in tech, or, I always liked doing the little experiments. And I saw that they had like these soldering kits out, that they were doing like circuit boards and stuff. And I was like, what is this guy doing in the middle of the Lincolnshire Wolds with these little devices? And I just wanted to pick his brains. I'm like, what are you making? And then as soon as he told me what he was making, which was a little power diverter to go with solar panels to heat hot water. Normally, I think most women or people would just be like, boring. But I was like, what? Well, hang on a minute. You can heat your water for free from your solar. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, and you get paid for what you generate on your solar. And he was like, yeah, regardless of whether you use it or not, you get. And I was like, why ain't the whole country got this? And if that makes you energy independent, like what more things can you send your solar to? And that's really where like my curiosity for the renewables industry like sparked, and where I really got on with Lee and the team, and how I just, typical Jordee style, couldn't sit still for long. Started in a little admin role to help him out, and then very quickly I was like, right, I want to run this joint. I want to get you sales. How do we sell to more people? How do we grow the business? So
that's ambition, right? But I suppose when you get somebody who thinks in that way, not perhaps not technically looking at something, not technically, but logically, to say, well, if that does that, then there's an outcome at the end that everyone should have. That's how great businesses start, isn't it?
Yeah,
always.
I really saw like the opportunity with the industry just from that little tiny product. I was like, if we can get full control of our energy in our home, and take ourselves virtually off grid, because I'm a bit of a punk really at heart, like my rock music, like sticking it to the man, all that sort of stuff. I was like, hang on a minute, if you can like take yourself off grid, because I was like the idea of living in the woods or whatever, and being totally detached from how we live. But I was like, oh, this would be way more comfortable if you could virtually take yourself off grid, control where your power goes in the home, and then flex it as well. Like I understood what Lee's vision was with demand side response, which is a bit, we go too technical, but controlling the loads in the home to match what the grid and the larger renewables on the grid are doing. So I was like, God, if you get thousands of these in and then can control all the units and reward the customer for it and pay the customer, and they have complete control of their energy, I was just like, I'm in love, I'm in. Let me do this. Let me sell it.
That's kind of revolutionary in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being able to, I mean, we've all been looking at the large suppliers of our power for so long, ever since I can remember. The idea of, it's almost anti-establishment, isn't it?
Exactly.
To say, no,
it was the big six, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that were just
right,
like, they were demonised online a little bit and on, in the media, and the big six were controlling everything and hiking up the prices. And then since COVID, we've seen it even more, like the profiteering off the energy. Like, it's been pretty shocking, really. So it's like, how can we decentralise? Like, we're decentralising currency. Why not decentralise our power and have a little bit more control over our own destiny?
All up for that.
And decentralise food supply and things like that. I don't think all the power of like our vital needs should be in the hands of a few.
Yeah.
So I just loved, from a little gizmo in a shed being like manufactured, I was like, I loved the manufacturing, loved the creativity, looked at the market, there was nothing like it. Then when we brought out the car charger, I was like, whoa, the industry is so boring, so we can add some like sprinkle to it and make it cool and make people want it. And
how did you get to that from there to the car charger? I mean, that's quite a leap, isn't it? From that heating hot water to charging your car.
Not really. You think it is, but it's very similar tech. It's total different products, but very similar technology and thought process that goes into the same thing. So if you've got a hot water tank in your home, it's like a giant battery store. And then if you think, what's the second largest load that you're going to have in your house? It's your electric car.
Oh, okay.
And the world was sort of going to electric cars. So how do you control both of them and optimize them to get like the best results from your solar panels? So that's what we set about doing. And I just love cars. Yeah. So I thought, again, I was like, wow, this really like bridges two industries together. Like the automotive industry and the renewable industry are going to become like perfect harmony. And then as we were doing this in like 2016, Elon was on the rise as well with Tesla. So Elon over in LA had like Tesla, he was releasing solar panel tiles. He didn't have the battery out yet. But then he released the battery and he had the car charger. But the funny thing was, like little old My Energy in England was actually the perfect fit that he needed, because he had all of these products, but he didn't tie them all together.
Oh, okay.
So they weren't all working harmoniously, and not everybody loves Tesla. So I was like, Lee, we're really, really onto something here, because if Elon's bringing out similar sort of things, and then we've got all of the gizmos that can control the hardware, and we can work with any car manufacturer, and we can work with any energy provider, and we can. I'm like, what? that's crazy. You don't just have to be a Tesla customer. You can be like all customers of all the car manufacturers. So the industries just merged together, and my energy was a big part of that merging.
I mean, you really took it to those heights, didn't you? It was such a, I mean, because it was a local firm, it made everyone really proud of that fact. I mean, you know, you'd helped to lift our heads in this area about what was possible.
Yeah, that's
but it was really taking that market by storm to the point that it felt that people didn't even know that market existed until
it didn't.
You said, "Oh, look, here it is."
It genuinely didn't. Like Zappi was the world's first solar charger. So even, you know, if you had a Tesla and you had a Tesla Powerwall charger, still wouldn't divert from your solar to charge your car.
Yeah.
So like even Zappi was the first to do that. And then still like the way that the whole ecosystem works is still really, really like leaps and bounds ahead. Obviously, like we were the first to market. We absolutely capitalised on that. COVID hit. There's been all sorts of crazy challenges, as you know, and the market has caught up a little bit now, but it still hasn't got that little edge and the IP that we've got with like our Harvey device and how it's monitored and how the energy flows around the house. It's still really unbelievable.
That was an interesting thing for me because, as you know, I'm not techie at all, but that idea of combining the charging of your car with everything else that's going on in the house and creating that whole cycle. So you're just taking the power as and when you need it and at its most effective.
Yeah.
That's genius, really, because that's what you need to get independence. You bring everything together in one place.
That's it. And then work with the energy providers as well. Yeah. So if you couldn't have all of the fancy gizmos yet, you could at least charge with renewable energy from your renewable energy supplier and work on smart tariffs. So we had, I think it was one of, if not the first smart tariff as well. So we partnered with Octopus Energy, who were disrupting in the space. Yeah. Now they're £8 billion, maybe more business. Massive, they grew crazy, but they were a startup at the same time as us. Yeah. So it was like that saying we were on the rise sort of at similar times. And they were being creative with their tariffs and their energy supply and really aligned. So that was... That was pretty magic as well.
Octopus seemed to have very similar values to those you're describing at My Energy, that's for sure.
Energy independence and customer control and really like customer centric.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. In comparison with the others, it seems.
And now they're all everyone's catching up again now. So it seems to be, but you need those trailblazers, don't you? In the early days, you need those disruptors to let the market know what's happening and to shape it. And it's cool that we got to do that.
And that's what My Energy was, a trailblazer, I suppose.
Absolutely.
And what I also admire the idea that you seem to be, the firm seems to be fairly rooted in Grimsby as well. I mean, it could have been easy if you'd head off to Leeds or Manchester or overseas, I suppose. Yeah,
it could have been like, it was never in mine and Lee's mind to take the business anywhere else. But naturally, when you're taking on investment or speaking to others, they're like, why? Why are you doing it? Because it's been really difficult to get like senior talent, you know, like when we were looking for our CEO, it took ages. People were refusing the job because it was in Grimsby and like all the applicants were down south and stuff. And it was like, oh God, it really was like not easy to find somebody that fits. So it has been hard work. And then obviously you can get products made so cheap overseas. That it can be tempting, but actually we've proven that you can do it profitably in the UK, which is amazing. We were the only profitable business growing back in the day. Like we were literally the only ones. Like look at the space, and still everybody's losing money and not making money. So we've proved that with British manufacturing, you can actually do it profitably because you can control your costs. You can pivot fast if you need to. You can literally, like we pivoted when we had a microchip shortage. That would have kicked the wind out of our sales if we didn't have our own engineering team and we didn't have our own manufacturing. But instead we doubled down on another chip that we could get supply of. Rewrote our software.
Absolutely. And the whole world was falling out about microchips and where they were going to get them from. And yet you survived this firm in Grimsby.
Yeah, we wouldn't have had the explosive growth that we had when the industry did, because the industry between 2020 and 2022 was like insane growth. Like none of the analysts could have predicted it. It was like wild. Just EVs took off, and I guess it was off the back end of COVID, and people just like realizing that they were cool, and Tesla's movement and everything. And with the ban coming up on petrol and diesel, But it was, so everything was like going in the right direction.
It was, yeah.
Like any story, it gets knocked sideways, and the growth all of a sudden slows if you're being faced with subsidies being pulled and government U-turns.
That was a tough time for you guys.
Man, it was brutal.
You didn't see that coming, though. No one saw that coming.
No one saw it coming. Whole industry didn't see it coming. The industry is still suffering now. Like I see businesses retracting, see, merger and acquisitions, people going out of business. Like it's been a tough old gig in the renewables and the EV industry.
Yeah.
So you never ever know. Like it's up, down, like a roller coaster. But I like to talk about the up because it was mental. Like it went from, it was like 200% year-on-year growth. Yeah, I mean, that's crazy.
Everyone knows
for
that's
a manufacturing
business.
That's crazy.
I suppose that just shows the impact that your industry more than any, how government policy or even words from ministers can suddenly have such a dramatic change.
Brutal. And I fall for it every time. I think like, the market's settled down and we're finally on like a buoyant. I fell for it. I call it the solar coaster because it was like when all the feed-in tariffs and everything were in solar. I thought, this is great. We're climbing with Lee, and then all of a sudden feed-in tariffs pulled. All the electricians got out of business overnight, and I thought, surely that can't happen again. It went buoyant. Then it's like the EV did the exact same boom as the solar, with all the subsidies attached to it and everything. Then all they're pulled overnight. Like, when will the government learn just to like gradually lower it instead of rip the...
That's because it goes from 5-year policy to 5-year every time there's a new election.
I've just been speaking about this. Hate
crazy,
it. 4-year cycles. And then the what I've seen down in the city, the banking system, like, and the investment funds and everything work the same way.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy.
So you bring a CEO, grow a business for the 4 years that you've got your investment in. If it's not performing, pull them out. Like there's no Chinese long-term thinking.
Yes.
Like that China have got it right because they're like at least right, but you know what I mean. Like at least they set a goal and like aim at it long-term and don't let the politics. I'm sure they do before people come at me because I don't live in China. But it appears on the outside that economically they've got the upper hand because they stick to...
But there's a lot to be said for that, Jordan. Even regardless of the country, when you started out, when you were driving up My Energy, when any of us starting up a business, we don't look 4 years ahead and think, that's the...
Oh, God,
we'll have another look at later on and decide. We plan long term.
Yeah, and you're also in absolute survival mode every single day because you're just like, we can't make the wages this month, so that's brilliant. How are we going to figure that out? When you're in a startup phase and... there's just always a problem, so you don't even have the luxury of thinking short-term or long-term. You set something up because it's going to be a lifestyle, because you've got a dream, because you've got a purpose, and then you just go with it. It's only when things get massive, it's like more money, more problems. Yeah.
Nice accent there. That's very good. Can I just say shout out for a solar coaster? I think that should be a word everyone adopts when they're talking about the sector in particular.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's very good. So, just before we leave the sector, because I want to come back to where you are now in a minute, but just before we leave the sector, what you've got a real insight into it now. So if you were to do any kind of prediction about, look, this is where the solar coaster is going. Yeah. What would you say about that?
I just think it's going to gradually go up now. I think there's nothing's attached to it, no subsidies or anything now, and it's still growing. It's just a lot more organic, which is nice. So it's growth, a nice linear growth trajectory. Yeah. And if all the winds and tides stay the same. It's also proven tech now. Like people have owned it a long time. People are making a lot of savings. Yeah. The cost of this type of technology is coming down, so it's more affordable and accessible to everyone. So I think it's just going to continue to grow. And I think it's the exact same for the EV market as long as nothing like crazy political goes on. We should be all right. I think it is the right way to go.
There's a logic behind it, isn't it? All of that. There's a logic that we have to do that.
So I think it's just going to be a lot more predictable and steady now.
Yeah. Well,
hopefully.
Kind of welcome that.
I really do.
I know the return on investment on things like solar panels on roofs is starting to become a lot more manageable, and people are seeing it as a very real alternative for their plans.
Well, people have had it for years and years now and can really do the math and vouch for it. And usually people that get it then spread that. It's like a ripple effect. Someone down one street gets it. The neighbours are like, well, they're saving money off their energy. Yeah. We should get it. And it's like it rolls out and out and out. Yeah. So
all hail the early adopters.
Thank God for them. Yeah.
All right. So now there's been recent changes for you personally recently. So, and you've got all sorts of new future planned out ahead. Some I know you can talk about, perhaps, and some you can't. But
Yeah.
so what's happening at the moment then for you?
Yeah, so I've taken a step back from the exec role in my energy because when you grow in a business, you don't really see yourself as like a CMO or a CEO, things like that. You just grow in a business. And when it got too big, or when it got to the size that it is now, I'm like, there's professionals out there that you can pay that can take it from that next phase, you know, circa 50 million turnover to 100 million turnover. And the amount of pressure that was put in on myself when even like the industry was going the way that it was, or the external factors were there, I was just burnt out and exhausted of the actual brain fry. I was like just fried all the time. And I thought, I've worked so bloody hard, got it to this point. There's people out there that specialise in taking it from that next stage. A few years ago, like I'm talking openly, I'd sold some shares, so I was like comfortable with my family. And I thought, I just had an epiphany one day. I woke up and I was like, why do I feel like my head's in a vice, and why am I allowing this pressure still when I can relieve it a little bit? So I just spoke to my board and we were like, yeah, sound, like if that's what you want to do, like take a step back from the exec role. And I'm still advising at board level, still super close to the team, and I've still got some skin in the game, I've still got some shares, so obviously supporting it, but just without a very like
operational day to day.
Yeah, like the pressure. I just needed to take the pressure off because it's been a decade. Do you know what I mean? It's been a minute. And to be honest, like I get a lot of opportunities that I turn down because I do give my all to my company. And sometimes that plays on my mind. I'm about to face the next like sort of decade of my life, and I'm thinking, do I just want to grind in the same business for ages? Like I love it and I love the team and I love the company, but I don't have to be on the ground like doing it. So I've taken a step back, spending some time with the family.
That's the beauty. Sorry, that's the beauty of it, right? I mean, you worked all that time, so there must be a time when you sit and think, okay, I want to do some stuff now that reignites me and gets me re-excited, that entrepreneurial spirit you had.
Especially because it's not just me and Lee anymore, you know, making the decisions. When it's you that can make all the decisions and stand by your conviction, that's fine. But when you're not the one in the driver's seat, it's a little bit like, and I don't want to be in the driver's. It's a little bit like I don't want to. It's time. It just felt like a natural progression, a natural time to sort of take a step back if you're not the one creating the destiny for the business, the entire destiny. There's like a whole board making decisions, and has been for you know a couple of years. So it's like, right, you know, now's my time to.
Nice.
It's in good hands. Let's go see what else we can do.
Wow.
I don't know what yet.
Big
genuinely, like don't know what. I've had offers. There's loads of other business. I've dabbled with some investment in some startups. I'm looking at, you know, board roles and NED roles, doing a lot of public speaking and stuff. I have absolutely no idea which way it's going to go, but I know that I've still got enough energy in me to like work and to build something. So,
I mean, you've got stories to tell, and as we've heard today. But the public speaking, well, I think I remember when you did your first public speaking role a long time ago, and you were saying how nervous you were at the time.
I was petrified.
And there you were, But now I've seen you since then, and I mean, you've got some. And especially such a new industry that you've been involved with, and I want to come to this in a minute, and you being a female entrepreneur in a world where more of that is needed, more encouragement for the girls in places like Grimsby is needed. There's a lot to say, really. Yeah,
you can't be what you can't see, can you?
No, precisely that.
It literally is as simple as that as well. And just spending a bit of time like doing some philanthropy or, you know, working. I want to get close and do some volunteering at the Horizon when it opens, you know, like because we put some money into that in the early days, and I want to see that come through. And, you know, it's just nice having the pressure on and being able to just do things that feel good for the soul sort of thing.
Especially when you know that the way you described at the beginning, that the experiences you had at school, that not everywhere, but to a great extent, that's still happening.
Oh yeah.
To young girls at 12 years old at schools today.
That's it. And whenever I speak to young people, I like to try and drill out of them like what their passions are. And then I've got such a way of like seeing into the future, or seeing like a large, how you could make it into a business, or how you could have a glowing career in whatever you're interested in. I've got like that weird ability where I could just go see a business in anything. So when I'm speaking to like kids or young people, if I find the passion, I'm like, oh, then you could do this, then you could do that with it. And you can see the little faces like, can you? Can you do that with it? Can you? And I'm like, and you could make money doing this. And and try and get that drive into them about like earning money and how they can build things. And
but
how
it's so important they hear from people who have been where they are now.
Yeah.
And who have got a story similar to the one that's unfolding for them now.
Yeah.
That's really important, isn't it?
Yeah,
For
so
them to hear
important.
that. So it's one thing to hear it from a teacher or even from their parents, who I'm sure giving them all the support that they can give them. But hearing it from somebody who's lived that experience and taken it to where you have.
Yeah. But even parents limit themselves, don't they, with their own belief system
we
or their
do.
own societal constructs or whatever, and especially if they've not done it themselves, that you don't believe it's possible, do you? So I think actually outside influence, away from parents, away from friends or away from teachers, like positive outside influence is really like important.
And talking about that, you often write and speak a little bit about this. You've got a beautiful family, and they must be so proud of you at what you've done.
Yeah, my family are, like, my mum and dad are my biggest fans. So is my sister. She's in my energy. She's had a full career out of it, and so is a husband. And like, my husband's retired, and he's been a full-time dad, which is like he's super grateful for, because he's had all this time with his daughter that most people wouldn't get. So it's a super like luxury and privilege. And everybody's just really rallied around me. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do it without all of that support. It does take a village. And I'm on a panel, actually, I think it's next week or the week after, talking about, like, can women have it all? And I think it's such a big topic, because I'm like, I'm not sure, if you don't have all the support that you've got, and it depends what you define as all. But for me, definition of all is time with your family and financial success or successful business. And I wouldn't have been able to do it if I didn't have the support systems to help me when I had Bonnie, and if I didn't have everybody rally around me in the early days to help me build the business. Like, it's not just me, it's the support at home with my husband, it's my family coming in on weekends to help me build Zappies or Eddies that need to go out at Easter because we couldn't afford to employ someone. It's family coming on at minimum wage, if that to, help in the early days. I'm not just a single person success story. It's everybody's chipped in with emotional support.
Absolutely. And I suppose it's really important to hear that from someone like you, because so often the myth of I struggled through all by myself and I achieved this great thing and I had to sacrifice everything to get it done puts people off, or makes them think I could never do that. Or actually, if you've got the family and the community,
it's the network
around
of the
you.
partner. Like, my husband's taught me off a cliff multiple times, metaphorically, because I'm like, I'm throwing the towel in. I've had enough of this. I can't cope with it. And he's like, he's always there to give solid advice behind the scenes. He's like actually the one pulling the strings, regulating the emotions.
Of course.
And there's a lot to be said about having a supportive partner behind the scenes to help you rise to your best self. Because if you didn't have that, I don't know what I could do. I'm Grimsby. I'd be crazy. Got to curb some of the Grimsby grit and some of the ratchetness.
Oh no! Look, I think it's a real testimony to you and to your family and to Lee and to everyone that has built up around you, what you've done and what you've managed to do, just from your early start at school all the way through to my energy to now, what you're doing, going out, and it kind of feels like giving back some now and giving yourself time to enjoy the fruits of your labour, but not only doing that, sharing it out to people, which is
I desperately want to, especially founders and especially female founders, just because I've been one, I've lived it, I've been through quite a lot in the decade with it, with whether it's having a daughter, whether it's, having a business that takes off to be ridiculously big, whether you've had to make redundancies, whether you've had to switch your entire manufacturing, whether you've had supply chain issues, there's so much that I could advise, and then building a board and going through all the turmoil that you go through as a person, thinking, well, I'm now not, I've hired all these amazingly qualified people. You start taking shreds out of yourself, thinking, what, did I just get lucky? How did I get here? The imposter syndrome, the mental challenges that you just have to go through on a daily. I just want to support as many people through it as possible, and also advise them at each stage, because there's just some simple things that you can do that can set you up for the future, like so much better, instead of giving all your power away. There's a lot. There's a lot I've learned over the last 10 years or so. Life, imagine. But definitely the last 10 years.
Yeah. And so if you were to go back now, because the learning curve you've been on is massive. Mm-hmm. So if you were to go back to let's not say 12, let's say 15-year-old Jordan, knowing what you know now.
Oh God, I'd be a weapon. Imagine if you could do that.
Would be a
Superpower.
weapon. That's a good
God.
description.
That'd be dangerous. If I could like literally know what I know now and go back to my 15-year-old self, she would be a savage.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But I don't know, like if like philosophically I'd be like it's okay. I wouldn't change too much.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go back and meddle because you never know how it's
It all led to somewhere.
gonna go, because it all led to somewhere, and I quite like my life. So I don't want to dampen her spirits or like rein her in or I wouldn't change any of my decisions or any of my life. I'd obviously like make tweaks, but I think fundamentally like morals and everything and passion and drive and all that, I'd just remain pretty consistent with. The only thing I would say is just don't let so many people dim your shine or try and take your power, because you do get a lot of that, especially being a female.
I was going to ask, do you think it's better now? Is it better being in that space as a female now, or is it?
I don't know. Like, I feel like when you're on the rise, it's different. But I feel like when you get to your metaphorical top, I feel like it changes a little bit. Like people it's like people cheer for you when you're on the way up, but then when you're there, they're like, it can be a bit like, not sure how I feel about that. Do I still support you the same? You know,
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's a British thing, isn't it? Because we always talk about that, lifting people up and then
shredding them down. I don't know why the hell we do that as Brits. Like, nowhere else does that. Like, at least the Americans, for example, just cheer you on to. Yeah. You don't get it the same. Maybe they're doing the celebrity culture, but here it's like, I don't know, it's like inbuilt in us to have. I don't know if it's jealousy or what. If you can channel it just to be envy and channel it into something positive, then great. But like jealousy or negative vibes and cynicism, it can be rough at times.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
But I don't know if everybody gets it. Like, I'm not a man. I can't speak for the male experience, and I'm sure they do, and whether they're just tougher with it or have thicker skin. But I've certainly felt it, and it's not just from the blokes that you get it, because that's a common misconception being a woman in business, that it's like the men are the misogynistic ones. It can be the women as well. It's like 50-50 split between either you've got women that want to pull you up and support you, or you've got women that are like, you know, tapping away at you behind the scenes, like henpecking and doing a little bit more manipulative things or in the media or whatever. It's like, it's just weird vibes. Women have got it at all angles, it feels. And I don't know if men do as well. I'm sure they do. But
yeah, I suppose that, they do, but perhaps not to the extent that you're describing. I can't speak for all men. I don't know.
No, who knows?
But it's really interesting, because it must mean, if everyone's facing that you spoke a bit earlier about morals and ethics, and I suppose just being comfortable with what you believe in and what you are, that's going to take you above all of that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. You just got to, I mean, it hurts sometimes, but you just got to keep, as long as you're true to yourself and keep rising above it and pushing forward, you're all right. And know that you can go home at night and look yourself in the mirror and go, well, I don't deserve that, or haven't done anything to deserve that. It's important, isn't it? So
if you can look at your kids and say, no, you can be proud of me, and justifiably so.
Exactly, yeah. So
that's a good way. That's a good way of thinking about it. But Jordan, I mean, you have done us proud in terms of an area, being an entrepreneur in this part of the world, and indeed in this country. And I'm really pleased to hear that you are looking at pushing out those messages, going out to others to support other entrepreneurs, and the philanthropy type of work that you're doing for younger people, people who are 12 and 13, who just need a role model to look at to say, well, if she can, then I can.
That's it.
And you know, it reminds me of a I don't often throw out quotes, but you just really epitomise this. And that quote is, they said that it couldn't be done, but she wasn't listening, so she went ahead and did it anyway.
I love that.
I thought that's you through and through.
Yeah, I don't like being told something can't be done. I'll figure it out. Yeah,
I could see that. Jordan, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for sharing so much as well.
Thanks, Mark.